Welcome to the Don't Get Mad, Make Money segment that I'm doing here with my friends Dielle and Kirsten. And today I wanted to really talk about branding overall, specifically in our industry, in our niches. And I want to introduce the concept of online and offline brand that I have been specifically partaking in now over the past year and a half. And starting with online brand, because I think that's something that we're all familiar with in our industries. When it comes to building an online brand, what have you found to be kind of the thing that moved the needle the most for you to build $1 million business?
For me, it was definitely, when it came to building an online brand, it really started with building my own thoughts about my niche and the industry that I was in. So for me, a lot of my audience knows that I really built my brand on my spicy Sundays, which was, one day a week where I would just say all my unfiltered thoughts about my niche, what I thought about it, meaning, what I believed about email marketing, what I believed about team and systems and what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing that I see, what I saw in the industry that I think could have been different and how I wanted to provide the solution. So for me, it really started with, what do I think about things? It started with observing, deciding what I think about it, and then deciding what solution I wanted to provide. Because I think with a segment like Spicy Sunday, it could easily be a little bit of this is spicy, a little bit of a whine fest about the industry where you just whine about it. But I never wanted to do that. I always wanted to provide solutions. So that's how I really started my online brand. And I think that was the most powerful thing for me to start.
For me, I would say movement. What was the movement that I wanted everything to portray and get out there? What was the energy? What was the purpose and the mission behind it? Because when I think about branding, I don't necessarily think about, what does things look like or what does the visuals of it right away. I more think about the feeling behind it.
Right.
And when you have the feeling behind things, then I think you can pick the visuals, you could pick everything else. And so I remember when I did my branding, I was shocked at the visuals. The visuals actually surprised me. But they're like, well, this is the movement that you want. And so this is how it needs to be communicated. And so I was like, okay. But I think if I would have started with visuals first, I don't think I would have been able to articulate my movement, if that makes sense.
I'm glad you said that, because to define online brand for me, it's how you are standing out in the industry from the moment you even enter the coaching industry or just any industry in general. It's how you stand out with your thoughts, with your marketing, with your messaging, with your offers, with your opinions. And then I think that then translates into the visuals that you do in a photo shoot, like the brand assets, your website. And I think that it all has to start with, how do you want people to feel? What is the impression that you want? And I know with both of you, when you decided to go through that more serious branding, when you were in the position to do so, I think it was really important about conveying that feeling so that someone else who doesn't really know you yet, hasn't heard your thoughts, your opinions, things about your movement, that they can also see it just from your visuals alone. I think that's something that's so important when it comes to building an online brand too.
Going on the topic of visuals, actually, when I was doing my Spicy Sunday, she makes fun of me for this all the time. The snake skin.
I hated that.
She hated
it.
Listen, the snake skin got shared, okay? I had the same thing every single week. I had a snake skin background that I'm pretty sure I screenshot from Google.
Yep.
I wanted it to be...
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought it was a design element.
So here's the problem. I looked up leather on Google.
Oh my God.
Because I wanted leather, because I was a leather girl.
Clearly.
I wanted leather. None of y'all do this. Please go to Jasmine. But
That's hilarious.
I wanted leather. So I went on Google. I was like, oh, I like this. And it was more snake skinny and it was red rather than the classic black. And the red I felt like would stand out on the feed. And so...
I thought you
so
paid
many
for
things
that.
wrong.
No.
Oh my gosh.
No. Jasmine knew. She's like, she didn't pay for that. No. So I had the snake skin every single week, and I would do do the classic notepad, and I would just copy it onto it, made it myself. And it's funny because at the time I knew I wanted something consistent visually, something that when they saw it on their feed, they knew it was Spicy Sunday, they knew it was me. But I also didn't realize how much people were like associating that with me until she made fun of me for it and was like, I remember your little snakeskin posts. And I was like, it felt like it represented visually what I was saying.
But to that point, I remembered it.
You remembered it.
It was different.
And that was the point.
It was a little bit of a risk. Can we talk about risk for a second?
Yeah, and I was actually going to say, I think in that moment for you, you picked red, the snakeskin. You want it to be bold. You want it to be out there. You want it to be different.
Yes.
That goes into online branding. I think when you're becoming more daring, different, taking risk, that's actually when people are going to remember it more. So many people now, they're copying the visuals, they're copying the trends. They're so afraid of taking risk and then wondering why they're not getting the attention from their brand that they really deserve or crave. But talk about risk.
Let's talk about risk. Risk are really, really important. I remember when I got my branding back and they're like, you need to go all black and white. That was a major risk.
Yeah.
We were at peak Pinterest, coffee holding, laptop typing, happy-go-lucky, bright colors, yellows, oranges. Like that's where we were.
That's actually so common too for women of color specifically. Everyone does like these bold colors and funky. Like I hate that.
Yeah.
I hate that because it's not appropriate for everybody.
Yeah, it doesn't work. My friend Keena, I say this all the time. She won't be mad that I mentioned her by name, but like her photos are teal, orange. She is, and she naturally has this big, beautiful laugh.
Yes.
But when you actually hear her talk about money, she is so cutthroat about, she's a money coach. She is so cutthroat about money. And I'm always like, Keena, you can't be smiling in your pictures. Like this don't match up.
Right.
But it would be a risk if she came out with something a little bit more bold. And so I think just like risk are so important. And then I actually wanted to talk about this and unpack this. Can we talk about like the high-end photo shoots that everybody is doing now? And like how they're not taking risk with those anymore?
Before you do that, I actually just wanted to name something quickly, which is, I'm going to sound old, but when I came in the industry in the year 2019, I remember I made a whole post about it at the time. Like, I don't want to be a pink OBM because at the time it was the pinks and I don't know if you all remember, like the pink templates were hot in 2019.
I didn't want to be the boho designer.
Yes.
Same thing.
But, and I said, I don't want to be a pink OBM. And I did make a post about it, but I more so centered the post because I have a point to this. I centered the post around basically like, you're going to get someone that's honest. You're going to get someone that's in your face. This is who I am. I didn't at all I didn't bash the pink OBMs. I just said, this is who I am.
Right.
And I think a lot of times when we're taking risks, we try to separate ourselves
by calling others
and what they're doing out of their, like calling out their brand. And it's like, oh no, I'm not a pink OBM, but this is who I am, rather than,
pink OBMs are this.
Pink OBMs are that. Pink OBMs do this. Me versus a pink OBM, right? And I think that's so important. And then that does, I feel like, lead into the photo shoots.
Similarly, I thought that I needed to be this like minimalist boho. That's when like browns, neutrals, beiges were like all the rage.
Oh, yes.
And I remember like I realized that this wasn't me. And my risk at the time was going with an all black look. It was summer 2020. No one was doing this. I went with an all black look. And similarly, I actually started telling people like, you need to stop hiring people expecting them to be, quote unquote, your best friend in the relationship that you're working with. But instead, you need someone who's honest, who's going to tell you what's going to work, what's different, what's going to stand out. And to loop this back to the photo shoot conversation, when I came into the industry, photo shoots were definitely something that only high multiple six-figure earners would do. The person that was just starting their business, they were using stock photos, or they were like propping things up. They were using iPhone pictures. And I remember that even when I first started selling my photo shoot offer and like introducing creative direction, the importance of photo shoots to the industry, I was saying like you shouldn't be using iPhone photos. But now everyone is doing like these little like mini shoots. And I think the reason that they don't work is one, they're not taking enough risk. They are not doing anything different for their niche. So like the money coaches, they're holding dollar bills up. They're looking like the money coach. Everyone is trying to prove that they're a coach by having a laptop up, by holding the mug. You have to do something that's different for your niche. And I think this is where searching for inspiration outside of your industry is so important. But also, I think people aren't infusing their personality in there. They're not infusing their personality in there. They're copying somebody else by saying, oh, I need to do a shoot in a hotel. I need to do a shoot that's like all neutrals. I need to do a shoot with, you know, again, the coffee mug and laptop. Thinking that that's what people are going to take them seriously for. When people are going to be wowed by your visuals, invest in you strictly off of visuals when they see that it's different enough. That's like the first way for you to actually get someone's attention.
And different can be slight. And I feel like we were talking about that yesterday. Like you had this website and I was like, I've never seen a laptop pose that way. The way you did it, it was so slight. It's not like, I think what I see a lot with the mini shoots and things like that, and even the big photo shoots, is people try to go so unique and so the other way to like make it a whole rebrand thing, when really it's the subtle things that really like uplift the visuals.
It's calculated.
Yeah, calculated, exactly.
Yes.
To that point, I recently have been saying, I don't want to do big shoots anymore. I don't want to do ball gowns anymore. I don't want to like do this because I just see so many other people doing it. And it's interesting where when I see other people doing other things, I don't then want to copy them. I then want to go my own way. And industry leaders do think like that. I think so many people get into the space and they see something happening. They're like, oh, I want to do it exactly like her. Like you should never, ever, ever, when it comes to your brand specifically, be showing your designer a photo of somebody else in the industry.
But how do you not copy? Like, I feel like that's the thing that people struggle with.
In order to not copy, you have to get inspiration from other places and other things. Yeah. This world is fueled by it. Let me give you an example. So for me, I think I'm really good with creating coaching concepts and frameworks, and the frameworks not being like anything else, because I literally get my inspiration outside of the coaching industry. So like my Disney World launch process, that has nothing to do with coaching, but I made it into coaching. You need to have a movement. That's social justice. That has nothing to do with coaching. So I'm literally taking elements in the world and applying them to the industry without being like, I want hers, I want this, I want that. That's already out there. So you have to like take it a step like forward, and you have to like do the inner work and to do the thinking. Nobody wants to think nowadays.
I was going to say two things.
Nobody wants to spend time thinking like this.
I was going to say two things. Number one, the literal how is, I think, literally sitting and thinking.
Yes.
And almost, this is going to sound, people say like, stop scrolling. No, scroll a little. Yeah. Scroll around. Like, like get out of, like you said, the coaching industry. But I think the reason why even still people end up copying is because they see someone communicate something in a way that they were trying to figure out how to communicate. So for example, that's what I've been trying to say. Like you see someone say something, oh, the way Dielle said it, that's what I've been trying to say. And then how do you avoid that?
So a few different ways. I think if someone said something better than you, is that really what you were trying to say? What were you trying to say? Like, what were you actually trying to say? What were you trying to say? Not being like, oh, she nailed it. That's what I meant. If they said it, that's not what you meant. What did you actually mean? And so this is...
People don't want to take risk.
They don't want to take
People
risk.
don't want to be... They don't want to be called out for doing something
to
different.
To your point, it's like, oh, you said it. Great.
Right.
Take it.
I'm going to take it. Right. You said it. That's exactly what I want.
And the reason why I'm pointing that out is because I think it's so much more innocent than we realize.
Sure.
A lot of times when you are like talking about like copying other brands and things like that, it feels charged because we hate to be copied as people. We also don't want to be called out on that. But I think it's a lot more innocent and subtle than we think.
Yeah, I just think people don't want to... People don't want to spend time thinking, or I always say that the source is my best friend. I will literally, you were talking about finding the words. I will literally do the work to be like, okay, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say this. Let me put this into the source. Let me play around with it like this. I will do all that work, and people aren't willing to do that.
If I may, too. I do think that, yes, people need to sit down. They need to ask themselves the questions. I think, one, the questions don't come as easily to people. I think you are naturally also a little bit more creative.
Curious.
For me,
Yeah.
get curious. The simple question you need to ask yourself, outside of this coach and their success, and this is literally a question I ask my clients, why do you like this? Why do you resonate with this? And take multiple inspirations. So whether it's like 5 different coaches, a coach, an OBM, whatever, ask yourself, why do you like this? And start seeing themes and patterns. Because like what I said earlier, I think people want to be so literal, and they think, oh, the only way I could look like a luxury coach is if I do black and white photos, because I know this person who's a luxury coach who charges high ticket doing black and white photos. I have done colorful brands for high ticket clients. And so I think it's just asking yourself, like, what is it that I like about this, and start picking up on themes. That's what I think.
What if it works? What about for the people that are like, but my audience really resonated when I went black and white?
Wait. In what context?
The context of someone says, Dielle went black and white, I'm going black and white, or Jasmine does this, I'm gonna try that with my brand,
And they get a good response.
So I think it's actually it's kind of like pseudoscience, where they start showing up more confident when they do that.
Wow.
And so I think it's actually not the aesthetic, it's how you're showing up. This is why
The
after
placebo
our clients,
effect.
literally, I think this is why clients, after they rebrand, they show up 10 times better. That's how they make their ROI, because I'm like, you now feel more confident with your branding, right? And you have the tools to do that. So they think that's the reason. That's like people saying, oh, I don't want to go rebrand, work on my online brand, because people don't care about that. People like what I'm doing right now is working. I'm already making money, right? But I'm like, you could be making so much more once you feel better about it, once you have the confidence to act like it.
That's the issue. People are so comfortable with good. I'm making 6 figures. I'm making 200K. I'm making 300K. And I'm like, you are leaving so much money on the table by just staying with that 300K business. You're leaving so much money on the table. You could be literally making $1 million if you did things your way. If you did things your way, your income could skyrocket.
I think we all skyrocketed our income because we dared to do things differently. We took the risk. We found a way. Genuinely. Every time I took a risk and did something different, I was able to book out.
Yeah.
I think to transition into that, talking about offline brand, I think started to become important to me once I felt satisfied isn't the right word, but I felt like I had a good grasp on what my online brand was and what decisions I would need to make in order to continue be quote unquote on brand in my niche, in my industry. Offline brands started to become important to me when I now also had the funds to explore, I think, things in my wealth portfolio, like quote unquote what is on brand for me to like be investing in, to put money into. Do I want to buy a home? Things like that. I think my own personal style, and also like my daily environment. So I think offline brand is when you're clocking out of work, your day-to-day, what do your surroundings look like? What do you prioritize? How did that come up for you as you started to make more money?
For me, it started with personal style. For sure. It started with personal style. It started with looking at my closet and being like, is this how I want my brand to, like my offline brand to be, is this how I want to present myself in the world? So it definitely started with wardrobe and learning how to dress in a way that felt on brand for me. And I literally created a brand statement for my style, which is cozy glam.
Yeah.
And that, to this day, like that really guides me in my offline brand, and that cozy glam also guides me in my environment. It then guides, my house, the way I decorate my home. It guides me in the things that I like to do. It guides me in the city that I live. So for me, it started wardrobe.
I like that. And it could be wellness. Like for me, it started even with like habits, routine, like how do I want to, arrange my day? What hobbies do I actually want to invest in? I think for me, it's more like effortless aesthetic. I think that's what I like for me. It's like it always looks put together, but it doesn't take like a lot of effort to make it happen.
To that point, I recently told you, I was like, I'm kind of tired of the if you know me, you know I have chunky necklaces and big hoops and all those things. And I'm like, is that cozy glam? Like I've been asking myself, is that cozy glam, or is it the more delicate chain, you know, with a bold statement on it? Like this is my favorite necklace ever. And so it's interesting now, like you're going to be continuously working on your offline brand, but I always like aligning to it. I think it's nice to have an offline brand too. Less decisions, easier decisions in your life when you have an offline brand.
I think for me, going back to movement, emancipation, what are the things that symbolize your offline brand? So for me, I think it was when I became a homeowner. That was really, really big. And I was like, wow, this is really emancipation. Like we're building wealth. I think also just the support you have in your life. I think a lot of things changed for me when I got our house manager, and I felt so much more emancipated. Like, oh my God, I never do laundry again. Like that felt amazing to just get like feel supported and to feel free in that way. So I think just like the ways that you spend your money, like how you talked about, and also the things that you invest in and the support you have should also play off of your values and your brand as well.
Yeah, going back to like effortless aesthetic, or I also say like daily luxury, like what would make me wake up and feel luxurious? And I've told you guys this, but I invested in like good quality pajamas, like matching sets. It doesn't even always need to be something so expensive that you spend money on, but it's like these little changes that you do. And I'm like, oh wow, I feel like put together when I'm waking up, when I'm going to bed. Even deciding like how to design your office space, figuring out now like my most recent thing, like last year, I think it was very much style. This year it has been like my apartment. I think like next year it's really leaning into hobbies and like, what do I want to spend my free time doing? Because you spend a little bit too much time at home, but like, it's like, what do I want to invest in hobby wise? Like, what do I actually want to learn, get better at outside of just business?
Looping back to like combining online and offline brand, I feel like you didn't do a rebrand if your whole life didn't change. You didn't do it right. Like my whole rebrand changed my actual life. It changed my style. It changed my home decor. I was thinking about like my black office. I was like 3 years ago before my rebrand, there was no way I was going to have a black office with like women of color behind me. So your rebrand needs to literally change your entire life, what you do, how you spend your money, the visuals online, the visuals offline. Like it's so important.
That just made me think. That's how you stop thinking. Okay, so we've all done this. We get a rebrand and then we're like, we outgrew our brand. That's how we stop outgrowing our brand. When we actually align our online brand with our offline brand, we don't outgrow it. Because everything's in alignment.
And that's why it needs to be so intentional. Because if it's not, you're going to be DIYing things every 6 months. And I've seen people go through a rebrand. 6 months later, they're like, actually, I'm bored. I want to play around with this. Didn't match. This didn't suit me.
Why do you think that happens?
I think it's because they don't like for example, you don't like something in your offline brand.
Right.
And so then you change it in your online brand. Like, it's almost like you get bored in your life, so you change it in your business and vice versa.
So it goes back to the brand was never done in an intentional and calculated way.
Right.
So if they took inspiration from something that in the moment in their life, in that era, they felt inspired by, and now they don't. And I think a good reason is instead of looking for inspiration, and this is why trends just always get grown out, is because at some point you need to make the decision based off of you, based off of how you want to feel. And there's talk in the branding industry where it's like, no, what do your clients want? And I'm like, no, my clients will follow me if I give them a reason to. My clients, my audience will love my brand if I continue to honor how it is that I come up with these ideas. So I think to your point, it's like that disconnect between online and offline brand. And I think it's just, again, like they weren't intentional with the process, as intentional as they could have been in the very beginning.
I think it goes back to copying too.
Right.
Right? Like if you're trying on somebody else's brand, if you're sending your designer somebody else's images, and then in 6 months it doesn't feel like you, it's kind of like, no shit. Like, of course it didn't. And so I think like just, it's so important to be yourself. How can someone be themselves? Like, what does that look like? I remember being like in school, buying books and like magazines were like, how do I know who myself is? I feel like it's such an elusive question. So how does someone know who they are?
I think it's, again, recognizing like patterns and themes even outside of your online life?
I think going back to values is how you figure out who you are in your business, in your life. Also thinking, I think a lot of the issue is people don't know what they stand for. And I think it's a trauma response thing. We're so concerned about making money. We're so concerned about doing only things that make us money, where we then lose who we are, and that doesn't become important anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It more becomes important on what's my niche, what's the most profitable thing I can sell. And of course, all of that's important, but it won't convert nearly as much as if you actually figured out what you like. So I think not that we're all too money hungry, but that leads too much of our decision making.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're looking at everything else on what's converting the best versus figuring out who we are and doing that work first.
I think also you have to eliminate options on the table. So like, if I could make sales no matter what, if I could make money no matter
Exactly.
what, if I could be, liked no matter what would I be doing?
Yes. That's so good.
That's huge. Like if everything works and anything is okay, then what do I really want to do?
To that point, I think so many people place a lot of like weight on external validation instead of trusting their own gut. And I think this is where like reputation, public image comes in. I have recently been speaking to a lot of people that are like, oh, my audience likes my current brand so much, I'm worried my rebrand will change me. And I'm like, just because you change your visuals, you change the way you're being like shown to your audience. I'm like, that's not changing you unless you are currently not, like, you're someone else. You're being a version of something else that you don't even feel aligned with.
Also, if I could just be petty, like, I'm just like, if changing your visuals like kills your sales, you got bigger problems. You have way bigger problems. If changing a piece of your if rebranding is gonna take your audience out, you have way bigger problems.
I think actually, so we can go into public image now. I think they're actually concerned with approachability. And they think that what got them sales is their janky website, their janky graphics, copying other people. It's like looking like I'm one of you, even though I've made a 500K, even though I've made more than you, right? Even if I hit 1 million, I'm still one of you. I still relate. I think it's like the people pleasing, the validation, wanting to like still feel approachable. Whereas if they go through this rebrand, now they're going to look like the big coach in the industry, and people will no longer resonate. People will no longer find them relatable.
Can we talk about that? Can we just take a second?
Yes.
So my favorite influencer, I talk about her all the time, is Monet McMichael, and she has blown up recently, and everyone all up in her. She's not approachable anymore. She has all this money now. She's not this. She's not that. And there was this kind of think piece that somebody did. I'm like, I wish that she wasn't like, I hope that she doesn't try to come off approachable. Like, I hope she doesn't try to.
She's aspirational now.
Take herself back.
Tons of money.
Exactly. And it just made me think like, yeah, like just. No, you're not the same as me. No, you're not. No, I'm not the same.
I did the work.
I'm not the same. Right. Like, no. And so I'm just like, that's what I love. I love the unapologetic. I want the unapologetic, not the approachable. Give me the unapologetic. Also, she was doing makeup videos. What was so approachable? What was so approachable?
Let me tell you. It was doing makeup, for example, using an iPhone instead of now you have like this HD camera.
Right.
It's the bedroom settings. It's the products you're using. It's all these.
You've got bigger problems if that's what you're worried about.
Right. It's all these nuanced things. And I think like, what if it's okay that you outgrow people in your audience? You're also growing yourself.
I think a few different things. I remember when I was doing a lot of work and I was learning how to speak on stages and understanding the psychology of stage fright and everything. Someone said, when you're speaking on a stage, you are then separate from the pack. And so you're up there on the stage and then everyone else is on the audience. And so it's like, they're the ones, if we think about it from like a caveman perspective, they have the food, the shelter, and the safety. If they were to get attacked, they would all be okay because they're a community and I'm by myself.
Always the social worker. Every time. Always coming in with the social work lens.
So I think about it from that place. Like when we isolate ourselves, we're like, okay, if something were to happen to me, then I don't have anyone. Whereas I think like, where can we more shift our mindset to? Like, actually, I'll be embraced more. I would love myself more. I would love my brand more. My community would then speak out. I felt like when I pivoted into women of color, which was a risk at the time, people came out the woodworks and supported me. I actually felt less alone when I was myself.
You become more yourself too.
And people can see that.
Yeah.
People can feel that when you are actually yourself, it inspires them to be themselves too.
And I feel like this could get deep, but it goes down to like it really goes down to, and there's a saying about it, like the more money you make, actually the more you become.
Right.
And it's when the more resourced you are, the more you become, because you are resourced and, to your point, have a level of safety and security, and are okay. And so you're able to actually have the capacity to be who you are and not be in survival.
I think it also raises the bar for your own audience, and it shows them what's actually possible. At some point, your own audience is going to want to dream. They're going to want to feel inspired. And while that was the case, at some point they're going, if we think about like dream coach identity, right? At some point, they're going to want to see their coach doing big things because they want that too.
When I signed up with Dielle for her coaching, she stopped being approachable to me when I signed up. I remember like we were peers for a minute, right? Because we both came in the industry at the same time. And then she suddenly was making so much more money than me, so much easier. Well, actually at the time we were making the same, but she was making it way easier. And a lot less products and things like that. And I was like, no, I want her. Like, I want the person that's not approachable. And I remember specifically saying to you, like, I want someone that's like, out of my realm, like, something I don't. And I think like the more we do that, the better. And to your point, your audience wants you to be growing. And I think it's a few reasons, a little bit of psychology in there. I feel like, because for one, they don't want to leave you because you're who they know, and they want to stay with you. And they want to stay in your audience, in your community, but you have to be growing at the pace that they want to grow themselves.
And you have to showcase that.
Right. They don't want to leave. People want to stay. They want to stay with their people and their audience.
And I was going to say, your audience wants the fancy photo shoots. They want the amazing websites. They want the pretty they want all of those things.
It's easier to sell. It's easier to be like, oh, whose event are you going to? Oh, this event. Look at the sales page. Look how nice it is. Oh, you're on this coaching call a lot. Like, whose it is? Oh, look at my coach. Here's her Instagram.
People want to be proud of their coach.
People want to be proud of their coach.
Yes. And I think it's also like a flex. Like, I'm actually with someone who is put together in that way.
Yep.
So speaking on like public image, I think part of that also goes into
I remember you were the queen of that. Are the queen of it. Everybody wants to be a Jasmine client.
Yeah.
Like, remember we talked about how it's a status symbol?
Yes.
Like,
it's a
we
flex.
all were like, I'm a Jasmine client.
No.
She did my brand. Jasmine did my brand.
Absolutely.
Like, we wanted that.
No, and that goes into like how I've built my reputation. I think public image is how people just perceive you, first impressions, based on how you're presenting yourself visually. I think reputation is actually based on your actions. What can people predict? What can people assume? What opinions can they hold based on previous actions? So if you're taking action in investing in your coaching business, in growing your skill set, in improving your visuals, in improving your sales, in doing something different, that's always what people are going to expect because that's your reputation. What are your thoughts also on people don't want to be quote unquote canceled for either like getting the wrong reputation or steering away from their reputation or getting a little too
their
bold?
Actions? Like, going to be canceled based off of their actions?
We can talk about actions.
Or too high. Maybe we took the wrong risk.
Right.
We said something and it was a little too risky. We didn't think that fully through, or maybe something like that.
Yeah, I know you've both had like at this level like fears of being canceled, and I know sometimes it could hold somebody back from, to your point, like taking risks, doing more things differently, because then there feels like there's more at stake, more on the line as you make more money.
I think for me, it starts with going back to being more you, right? You do start to get a little scared about like how me can I be though? Like, how me can I be, really? And so I think that's, for me, in my personal experience, is the majority of it is like, how honest can I actually be? How me can I really be? Can I really give my opinion on something? Can I really? And also, to the point of brand, you've helped me a lot with this. Do I even need to? Do I want to? Is that on brand for me to talk about it in that way, etc.? So actually, for me, it's been really helpful to have your brain, Jasmine, in the sense of running things through, making decisions from a brand standpoint. That, to me, when you have, it's almost like not a brand guide, but you know what I mean. When you are deciding on your brand, it makes it a lot easier, your decision making, so that you're less scared of getting canceled. What do you think, Dielle?
Can I?
She was making faces the whole time.
It has actually.
I was being honest.
It has nothing to do with that. I had a thought, and I was like, "Am I really going to say this? This is a risk on risk." Okay, so everyone bear with me. I remember when my mentor, I actually brought this to my mentor, and I was like, "I'm quirky. I'm this. I'm that. Like, is anyone going to invest in me? Is anyone going to invest in all my quirks and weirdness and strange tendencies? Like, am I going to get canceled one day? Basically, just like, am I going to be long-term accepted?" And she said, if you're a thought leader and if you have good products, people will always continue to support you, accept you. You'll always have a space in the industry. And that made me think about the brands that we all use. I won't name them, but these brands ran by these white men all the time that we give all of our money to, that we use on a near daily basis all the time. They make mistakes. They mess up. But yet we still go get our favorite drink. We still order our packages from this company. We still interact with their companies because the product is so good. And so people do have values. Let me be clear. Like, we definitely have a set of values, and sometimes people do cross the line. But if you have a good enough product that people cannot live without, I think they're a little bit more forgiving. And that calms my nervous system. That allows me to be a little bit more at peace, being like, if I can still get them the results that they want, how they want it, when they want it, that'll supersede everything.
So I think you're saying making your brand so essential will like force people to be loyal to it. Pretty much.
People always have a choice.
Of course.
They always have
The social workers like, don't use force now. Don't use force now.
They always have a choice. But I was
They're
just
more likely.
I was just thinking about, like, there's some brands that have done some really messed up stuff and we still click buy. Why? Because their offer is just so good.
There's no competition.
There's no competition. And they end up 9 times out of 10, they still end up listening to us at the end of the day.
Something that has helped me is there's a controversial comedian who I will not name, but I love comedy. And so I happen to have seen, a quote from this person. And the quote actually really helped me. And it was, for every time you get canceled, one audience leaves and another one comes. And, just describing audiences as not transient. Transient's the wrong word, but always moving. And like there's a cycle, actually cleaned a lot up for me, because I was like, even if, and I never want this to happen, of course, none of us want to make a mistake, but even if I did, and if I allow myself the permission to make a mistake, if I do, I'm going to be okay, because audiences are just cyclical, and that's all it is. And that has helped me a lot as well.
I mean, too, and something that helps me a lot is, and the saying goes, like, have the confidence of a white man, have the confidence of a white woman. Just when 2020 happened and this industry, literally, I felt like it was a Barbie dollhouse and everything got shaken out. So many people were canceled. They went silent. They deleted their Instagrams. They deleted all these things. They came back and started selling, and there were people right there.
And you know where Dielle was? Right there. Dielle was like, I missed you. It's true.
No, there's still some brands that I don't support off of the 2020 BLM movement, but it's still, Kirsten's making a face, but it's still, that helped me a lot to be like, if a white woman can bounce back off of literal racism, I'm all right. Like, I'm going to be okay.
To
We
that
can edit that too.
No.
My
no.
face.
Risk.
My face.
Risk.
On that note, I think that it also depends on how personally attacked you feel. Because I can cancel a brand and you guys don't have to, right? You can cancel a brand and I might not, right? And so I think it depends on how personally attacked you feel. And with reputation, with like public image, my thought is always that if someone is deciding to cancel you, that means what you put out there was actually misinterpreted by what you expected it to look like. So they could have assumed, oh, I wanted to get this reaction. Cancellation happens when the person on the other side doesn't perceive it that way. And I think to make better decisions on how do I not get canceled, it's kind of like, how can this be perceived in the worst way possible? Are there loopholes where people can easily misunderstand this? Or almost like spin the narrative, like how these gossip tabloids will like come up with a story on like a celebrity and they'll make a headline like twisted. So asking yourself, like, can this be like taken out of context, etc.
You actually helped me not get canceled. I don't know if you remember when we were.
We all do every single day, every day of our lives.
Okay. When we were talking about emancipation, this was so small, but I think you literally saved my event. This was so small. But I was like, okay, how can I sell my live event? How can I sell everything? And Kirsten and I, it was actually Kirsten's idea. She was like, let's come off with like 2 days, 200K. They're going to make 200K off of these 2 days. And we were like, yeah, great idea. And then we called you, we were like, hey, how does this sound? And you're like,
We have to run everything through Jasmine. Literally everything.
To your
They'd
point,
be in jail.
to your point about like cohesion, right? Someone am saying I'm going to teach them all of the philosophies on how to make an extra $200,000.
And you were going to deliver that. I think that's important to know.
Yeah.
You guys are a phenomenal coaches.
Yeah,
yes,
you were
but
going
I
to
think-
deliver that.
I think it was the perception and the misinterpretation that would have gotten me quote unquote canceled.
Right.
I think people would have been like, okay, it's day 3, where's my $200,000? And so it's running everything through that filter. Like, how could this be interpreted in the worst way possible? But I do just want to name, how will someone still be themselves while also trying to not make sure that, what's the balance?
I think it starts with, why do we even want to? Like,
Yeah.
why do we want to make sure that we are, like, why, for our audience, not for us and our brand, but for our audience, why do we want to? What do you
It's the
think?
same answer. You have to pick and choose your battles. You guys have no problem rejecting clients who don't believe in your core philosophies.
Totally.
You should have no problem picking and choosing your battles on what you're willing to be canceled on. You both have said like public opinion statements, and people could technically take that and cancel you on it. So similar to me, I would say like a soft cancel could be a block, an unfollow, a mute, right?
Soft
That's a
cancel.
soft
She got a
cancel.
framework.
Wow.
That's a soft cancel.
A philosophy.
You might have said something that I'm like, okay, this I don't agree with.
I feel like I definitely got some soft
Yo, you saw both of you.
I think I have several. Yeah.
No, you have both soft canceled people, and I think
we've been soft canceled. I think people
Right.
have blocked us, unfollowed us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think it's like, what are you willing to take back and forth? And some things like you might say people could cancel you on, but you're like, no, this is fundamentally what I believe in. I will ride or die on this hill. And to your point about like audiences kind of being transient is like, you're going to get people leaving, but then people will come because they agree with you on that. And right now you're just at like peak agreement, and some people will eventually disagree. And again, soft cancel is also people not resigning, people not wanting to work with you anymore. Like there's just so many flavors of that. And I think, how can you just, if that's okay, where can you make like the public cancellation, the effect of that?
That weirdly
that
helps
dramatic?
my nervous system, because it's like, oh, it's already happening.
Right.
That thought helps me a ton.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm scared of anything, I always think to myself, it's already happened. Someone has already talked shit. Somebody has already said they hated me.
Yep.
Someone has already said my stuff doesn't work, even though it obviously does.
Mhm.
There's always a hater. They've always been there. The day you popped on Instagram, there was already a hater. There was
Mhm.
already one existing.
Also, a lot of times you're the one making it personal.
Mhm.
On the other side, like the way that you were talking about comedians or brands or whatever, on your end, you're like, this is transactional. I'm still going to buy from this brand. I'm not going to buy from this brand. Right. And at some point, the business grows so much that the CEO is like, okay, like moving on. Anyway, we lost one unsubscribe. Let's move on. How can we get 10 more? Versus, I think when it feels more personal, like in the coaching container, when you're talking to this person every day, etc., they have no thoughts about canceling you. You're the one having all of the thoughts about what you're making it mean and what they're going to say, because you start losing faith in yourself, and you forget what your reputation was built on, and you forget the value that you could provide. I think when self-doubt happens, when insecurity happens, that's when cancellation feels its worst.
Something just came to me, and I think we're more scared of discourse. And what if sometimes, like,
you need the receipts?
Yes, but I think we're more scared of discourse than anything. It's like, what if it's the discourse that scares us more than anything?
Like the comments or the sharing.
Right, the sharing. It's the discourse and being scared of that more than anything.
That it's taken public versus if someone so if someone's doing a soft cancel, necessarily not everybody knows.
Totally. And it's more the discourse that we're scared of, because we all have so many examples of, and I feel like we use cancellation, we should use it loosely from the sense that, and you say this all the time, you can never lose your business. You don't ever have to lose anything, right? Like, you can always bounce back. And, you know, what I was going to say is, like, we have examples of people that have bounced back. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Especially, listen, we're talking about the people that haven't are horrible people. We're talking about saying something a little spicy that got taken raw. That's the kind of, we have to like ground this in what we're really talking about.
Not
like
fundamental humanitarian.
Yeah,
exactly.
Let's be for real, right? This is the coaching industry, and so I think, we have examples of bounce backs.
But I would name, to your point about we take it too far, like the coach has taken it too far. We have seen where people are hard canceled, soft canceled.
Yes.
The coach takes it too far, and then they stop selling. They then stop enrolling clients. So then our brain doesn't know the difference between the two.
This is all about knowing how to do damage control. This happens when a coach acts all defensive, and then they're being perceived as like, I never did anything wrong. I'm not apologizing, just to clear the air. This. And then people see that again, it's almost like puts gas on the fire. So I think it's asking yourself, based on your reputation, based on your public image, how do you want to be perceived in this treacherous moment, in the worst of times? And for some people, they will disappear off the internet, come back like nothing has happened, right? This is also where legal and stuff get involved. But how do you want to handle the situations? Because those will always arise, and people will respect you for how you've handled the situations, even if they were borderline about to cancel you.
Yeah. I remember, I'll never forget it. It was Rachel Rogers. She just announced her ranch, her house, and it was beautiful. So much excitement. I was excited. This is when I was still in my 9-to-5 job. It gave me so much possibility, so much hope. And she was on live talking about how excited she was. And then people were saying like, Rachel, how do you feel about the articles? How do you feel about the articles? And she was like, yeah, I know about the articles. And people were like, what articles? She was saying like there are full-blown Facebook groups literally going live in their communities talking about how awful of a person I am. And I just loved how grounded she was with that and how okay she was with it and her response to it. And she was like, it's totally fine that this is triggering for them. I know, like, as a Black woman, how big of a deal this is, and it could press a lot of buttons. I know that I'm doing that, and I just want to provide some possibility for you all. I love how she just handled it. And I was like, I want to be canceled, and I want to look like that one day.
I think it's taking control of the narrative.
Yeah.
I think if we want to, like, how can we avoid damage control, or like make the damage control seem perceived as like highly as you experienced? I think it's genuinely just realizing that it's just about how you hold yourself and taking control of the narrative. So stepping in to say something before it's too late or before it's out of control. Otherwise, yeah, like, there needs to be other things that you need to consider. Okay, so I think we talked enough about all the risk topics, hot topics on branding, offline and online. Thank you all for tuning in to the Don't Get Mad, Go Make Money segment, and we'll see y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks.